I hate to say it, but I guess it's part of the game. It's not really about how fast you're going. Once you sit down in the car, it takes you away to a different place.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Inside the Machine. I'm Jordi Fachalveles and I interview people inside the automotive world to go beyond the surface of motorsport and performance cars, uncovering the thinking, the engineering, and the human decisions that shape how these machines are built and experienced. Today I'm here to interview Lino Fayen, a Ferrari collector, racing driver, and entrepreneur, and someone with whom I've had a conversation that was as insightful as it was eye-opening. From competing in motorsports and pushing cars to their limits, to building collection suites and working with high level collectors, Lino takes us inside the world of cars beyond the surface, where engineering, rarity, and experience come together to shape both performance and value. We talk about what truly makes a car special, from limited production models to engineering marvels, the shift from analog to hybrid technology, and what makes a car feel alive to drive. Today's conversation is about what it really means to drive, the balance between performance and feeling, and how engineering defines our connection with the machine. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Lino Fayen. So, Lino, welcome to Inside the Machine.
Yes, of course.
How are you?
Good, good. Thank you, Jordi. Thank you for having me. I think that what you're doing is very interesting, and I hope I can bring something positive and useful to your
Yeah,
channel.
I think with all the experience you have, both collecting, racing, everything, I think it all helps.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, so just to start things off a bit with the collecting part, is there kind of like an example of a car? Because, well, I know you collect Ferraris, but is there a car where the engineering alone justified buying the car, where you wanted to buy it because it was truly an engineering marvel?
Look, I think that when it comes to collecting, people are always looking for those details that differentiate the car from the other cars, right? Even within one brand, like Ferrari, for example. When you talk about collecting, you're always trying to get those cars that are either numbered or limited production cars. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Ferrari doesn't really do numbered cars. There's only one model that they actually put a number, like number 258 out of um, X, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you're always looking for those limited production cars, usually 12 cylinders or the last edition 8 cylinders that they did. Nowadays, when you're talking about collecting, people are very interested in the gated cars, manual transmission
Yeah.
cars, and also special painting. There's now like a really big trend in Porsche collectors, for example, and they're calling the cars the paint to sample, the PTS Porsches.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you saw, but I think it was a 918 Spider that went to auction for like $6 million just because it was one off orange.
I don't
Yeah.
see it.
So those like different things that set one of the cars apart from all the other ones, even if it's on the same production model. Those are the ones that will truly be something special for the collector. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when you're talking about engineering, exactly, it's also then you go to more specific brands. I would say like Koenigsegg, for example. I
Yeah,
mean, what that guy is doing engineering wise is just it's
it's
out of the
crazy.
world, right? Like I can't remember the exact model right now, but he has a car that you can switch from automatic transmission to manual transmission.
Yeah, it's
You
a
have
new C. Well, I don't remember. Yeah, C.
yeah.
So
So the C20 or the C something like that, but
something like that. Yeah.
and you have a clutch, right? So it's not just like like computer based going from automatic to manual. You actually have a clutch. So when you go to the manual transmission, you have to engage with the clutch, and the whole system goes off. So those are like what every single collector would dream of to have in their garage, right? Because it's
Yeah.
an engineering marvel. It's a number. It's a limited production car. There's literally like maybe I don't know. He does 25 or 50 models of each car that he does. So those are the little things that I think collectors are always looking for.
And well, about this, what Koenigsegg's doing, both the manual and the automatic, I think he does that for a bit of the experience, right? The driver's feel. So have you ever felt something? Well, have you ever felt experienced cars that feel fast but not engaging?
I mean, to be honest, I think that when you are going fast, it depends on how the way you drive it, I guess, the way you drive the car. Because, I mean, you can, there's some cars, especially SUVs, I would say nowadays,
Mm-hmm.
you're on the highway and you suddenly hit 100 miles an hour and
Oh,
it doesn't even feel like you're driving 100 miles an hour. That's what, like 150 kilometers, maybe something like
yeah,
that.
160.
And you don't even feel it, right? So, but
No,
it's, I think it's because of the way of how you got to that 100 miles, right? Because at, you went on the highway maybe at 50, 60, and then progressively you got into 100
yeah.
without even realizing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a different thing than if you get on the highway and you have a manual gearbox and you start shifting gears and
Yeah,
going
and you have the sound.
zigzagging on the highway, going like passing cars all along, and
Yeah,
then you have that feel, and maybe you're not even going 100, you're going 85, but engaged with the car, engaged with the machine, you're sitting there, and like all your senses are focused on driving, right?
yeah.
So I guess, and I guess I answered myself. It's not really about how fast you're going at the end of the day, right?
It's about the experience, no? Like
It's about
you're
yeah,
driving with the
it's about the
sound.
experience and about how you actually drive the car.
So, is there a specific car that you love because it kind of feels like more alive to you or more engaging to drive?
Look, it's like I'm a sucker for manual transmissions. Like if I learned how to drive with a Ford Fiesta when I was maybe like 12 or 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started stealing my dad's Subaru WRX STI when I was 14.
Yeah,
And I used to have a lot of fun with that one. And then from that point on, I drove. I remember a John Cooper Works. Um, that was really fast. I
yeah,
had like 250 horsepowers under 1,000 pounds. It was
yeah.
really fun. Also manual, manual transmission. Then I had a Ford Focus RS. That I think it came with 280 horsepowers, and I got it up to 400. So I'm always been like that that guy with the weird looking car, not
No,
necessarily like street racer, but like I'm looking for different things. Like I
yeah.
want to have an experience when I'm driving. It doesn't
Something
really,
fun.
it's not about the brand or about how fast the car can go, but it's something that I feel that I'm having fun while I drive it.
Exactly.
Now that I have two kids, I had to find something that at least for me, fun to drive, but that I also could take my kids in, and the
Yeah,
dog, and a couple bags in the trunk. So
yeah,
what I'm driving right now, it's an Acura Integra Type S,
yeah.
which is it's fun. I
It's
like it,
it's fun.
and it checks all the boxes that I need to check now.
Yeah.
In this stage of my life.
Hopefully, maybe when they grow up and maybe they can drive, you can go back to something more.
Oh yeah, definitely. Of course, it's not. I'm not hoping that's definitely gonna happen. I can tell you that. Yeah.
I think that my parents are hoping for that too. They
Mm.
want me to get my driver's license and so they can get something fun for them. But you're in the collection suite, right? So with all the cars, right?
So collection suites, just to tell you a little bit of a backstory.
Yeah.
It's when me and my family we came to the United States from Venezuela. That's when we actually started getting into the whole collection and collecting cars, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, like maybe like everybody kind of we started with a couple of cars, and then the collection started growing, and at some point we had 7 8 cars in a small garage in an office building. Yeah, we started collecting, and we got to a point where we had about 8 cars in a small garage space in an office building that we were renting, and we kind of made it or build it out so that we could have a little like a bar or something like that to, spend some time in there while being around the cars.
Mm-hmm.
But we came up to a point where we really couldn't sit anywhere or stand anywhere. We really couldn't walk, or to get one car out, we had to literally take all of the cars out so that we could take out the one that we wanted.
Yeah.
It was cramped. So we told to ourselves, this can't be really something that it can't be really just us that we're having this problem, right? So we decided to build something for ourselves and for other collectors. So about
Mm-hmm.
9 years ago here in Miami, we started the construction of Collection Suites,
Mm-hmm.
which is a community of luxury warehouses for car collectors, art collectors, wine collectors. And it kind of became this. So this
Yeah.
is our personal unit. You can
It's
see we
amazing.
have this is a 40 Maserati Mistral 1 of 57 from 1967. 16 Scuderia, that's a 599 manual transmission, 1 of 30 in the world, a 599 GTO, a Competizione, Pista, 550 Barchetta, 488 Challenge, and we have some other over there. And
It's
here we have a little, some space where we can hang out,
yeah.
a big screen TV where we can, watch games, watch the races. So we built this out so that we could do what we wanted to do in a garage, what we felt that collector's garage should be.
Yeah.
And, other people liked it too. So it kind of became a project, like a life project. And
Uh-huh.
now we're selling it to other collectors, and we're currently finished the build out of the second phase here
Yeah.
in Miami, and we're building a third phase in Palm Beach, and we are looking to keep expanding to other states as well.
Something amazing. I actually have my own collection here too of Ferrari and
Well,
the
you got to
40
start
and the big
somewhere.
truck. Yeah, exactly. But well, good luck with phase two and phase three.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
And it because it really is amazing your collection. You were showing it, and I just kept smiling because
Well,
it.
you're welcome to come anytime, and maybe we can do another video here about the cars more
Yeah,
specifically if you want or something like that. Okay, so whenever you're in Miami, just let me know.
yeah, I'll go there. So, well, going a bit back to more of the engineering part of it, the cars. Is there an example of an engineering trade-off that you have seen from the cars you collect, or just the cars you've seen in general that you find particularly interesting?
I mean, I think it's the technology nowadays. It's so involved in the car industry and the car making world that the engineering part of it itself, it's become almost I don't know how to put it, but like the most important part at the end, because now you're
Most.
all the brands are building these hybrid cars, right? And you
Yeah,
can see it also in Formula One. Now they're doing this 50-50 type of
power.
cars where they have the 50% of fuel engine and 50% of the electric engine, but now they're saying that there might be some things that they want to change
Uh-huh.
because of security issues that they're having. But the I think that the world shifted too quickly into the whole electric motor era, and that might have been a mistake. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't think that we're ever gonna go to 100% electrical for everybody and for the whole world. I don't think. Hopefully not. But it's definitely something that it's there and that we have to live with, right?
Yeah,
So the technology and the engineering part, it's always been the most important part, but it used to be something like only engineering, right?
Yeah.
You had the mechanical engine, and that's it. There wasn't purely analog era like for with the 50 for the F40, for example, that I have right behind me. Like, there's nothing really. There's nothing technological about it.
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
needle.
It's exactly it's all analog. It's it's like different not wires, but um compression and mechanics and pistons and fuel injection and it's pretty basic, complicated, but basic at the same time. You could have a mechanic take a look at whatever car, and it would all be the same. Nowadays, if you got to specialize in different fields and areas, and you need an electrician and a mechanic, and you need to know how batteries work and how to dispose of them or change them, or
Yeah.
it's a lot more complicated than just a car, I would say. Yeah. I mean,
So do you
when
kind of
it's
think, well, this technology, this implementation of technology, do you think it has improved or diluted, made worse the driving experience?
no, I mean, like we were talking about before, right? It depends on how you drive the car and how you want to engage with the machine. Um, I remember I had the opportunity of driving, for example, in a Ferrari, the um FS90, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the SF90. I think it has a V6 plus
V
the
three
uh
electric motors, no?
plus three electric motors, and it goes up to 1,000 plus horsepowers, right?
Yeah.
And people don't really like the car. I mean, if you see the numbers, you would have paid, depending on all the gadgets and the options that you put in it, 600,000 plus dollars. And now
Mm,
you can find one for maybe 300, 350, because people
yeah.
don't really like it, but it's a really fast car. It's a really
Yeah.
fast car. The engineering behind it is crazy. It has a lot of the technology that has the WEC cars in Ferrari.
Yeah.
A very similar engine, the technology, the hybrid system. So you know it doesn't, like, why people don't really like it when it's such a you know technological and new and actually like a craft piece of engineering.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, yeah, I think especially for people, collectors, car enthusiasts, well, I haven't driven many cars, but I think it has, well, diluted the experience because what we like is the sound of the engine, the manual transmission, like you said, something that we can engage with. And well, I think it's for the average person, they're not going to be driving an SF90, but I think the technology maybe has made their life easier for them. But for people who actually like cars and enjoy driving them, maybe it's diluted it. No?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I agree. I agree. It's a shame, for us fuel heads, um that you have to. I think now that what they're doing is they're putting the engine sounds in this through the speakers and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And that's a shame. Really, it's a real shame. Um, but I don't know. I hate to say it, but I guess it's part of the game
Yeah.
that the people have made the industry play.
Hmm.
You know, so
So, well, from the collecting standpoint, what have you learned about cars from owning them long term? Is there anything you've learned about these Ferraris you own?
well, mainly, I think it's a different asset class, right? At the end of the day, you start collecting cars for because of a passion that you have for cars in general. Then it turns out it turns or it goes to the fact that they're also an asset class, and it's a safe haven for investors as well, right? So
Mhm.
that's when you start looking for those cars that will at least retain its value, okay, and hopefully multiply with time.
Yeah.
So it's something that it's rapidly growing, I would say too fast, to be honest. Um, nowadays a car that was worth, let's say, $100,000 a year, 5 years ago, might be 300 today. So
Yeah,
that's a 3x. That's a 3x on your investment just within 5 years.
5 years.
And that's something that it's hard to find in the stock market or in other alternative investments.
Yeah.
Also because there's some people that say, okay, well, you have alternative investments like wine or whiskey, which have performed quite well in, in recent years, but also in the cars, but you really need to know where to get them from. I think that sourcing cars is a little bit easier than sourcing, very specific bottles of wine or very specific barracks of whiskey, from the makers.
Mm-hmm.
These are the things that, as a collector, you start realizing that it's not only about the collecting; it's also a safe haven for your money, and for your legacy, for your kids, for you, for your family.
Mm-hmm. And from the engineering standpoint, have you learned anything about it in the long term? Something like from driving it that the first time you wouldn't really have noticed, but after driving a car maybe like 10, 15 times, you're like, oh, this car does this. I didn't even know it did it.
Well, I think there's always, when you push each car several times, and you drive each car several times, you always learn something new about it, or even
Mm-hmm.
you relearn something that you might have forgotten about the car.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess it's a good problem to have when we don't drive the cars that often, but when we do, it's a good feeling because you sit down on them and it's like, okay, so where was it that you needed to push this button here to,
Yeah.
to do this or that? It's a good feeling. So you're always, I guess, like relearning a little bit about the car, and
Mm-hmm.
when you get to driving them, that experience of pushing it to a certain limit, and driving it to a certain limit, it's quite exciting.
Is there any specific example that comes to mind?
Well, for with older cars, for example, you always, um they didn't have any electrical parts or anything like that, like we were discussing before. So you always have to remember, for the Maserati Mistral, it's a 1967 car. So, you know when you are going to turn it on, you have to first turn on the fuel pump. Okay,
Yeah.
give it a couple of pumps. Okay, like
Yeah.
touch a couple of times the clutch at the same time, and then um start the engine slowly. Okay, because you need to, like, everything
Warm
needs
it
to
up.
start flowing, so
Yeah.
that it gets to the engine, right? So that in itself, that's a whole process that you don't have with any other car.
Yeah.
With any car that's, I don't know, after this, probably the 80s, you don't have to turn on the fuel pump, and then switch to a manual pumping system that you have inside the car. It's just crazy. So
Yeah.
these old cars, they're fun to drive, and we actually have, it's small, it's not that hard really, but instructions on how to turn on certain cars that are from a certain age. So
Yeah.
that's always fun.
It's an experience.
It's an experience in itself. Yeah, exactly.
So, well, do you think there are certain engineering aspects or designs that age better than others? Or from a certain time, from the 80s, maybe they age better than the ones from the 90s did?
Do you know what? I don't know. I think that's a very difficult question to answer. Generally speaking, because at the end of the day, it's a matter of taste, right? It depends on what you like. I don't know. I remember for me was the Lamborghini Countach, um, and the F40 and the F50. Like I grew up looking at those cars like, the holy grails. And those
Mm-hmm.
are uh, late 80s, early 90s designs, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken. So, well, the Countach is mostly 80s, and the F40 and 50 late 80s and the 90s. But those were for me like the holy grail, right? And they were very different. The Lamborghinis were always like more square looking, but very aggressive,
Uh-huh.
and the Ferraris were a little bit more curvy, and they had more refined lines, I would say. But they were, each of them were beautiful in their own way,
Uh-huh.
design wise, right? And if you go back even more in time, you had, for example, the 250 GTO, the Ferrari 250 GTO. It's just it's
Yeah.
but you still have cars that start the design of the certain cars started just by looking at the 250 GTO. And I think that, for example, the V12 class in Ferrari nowadays are also just a continuation of that specific design. I think that every era and every design and every model of different brands are just special in their own way.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was talking to Daniel Mastereta. I don't know if
Mm.
you know him. He designed his own car. I was talking to him a couple weeks ago, and he was also saying how there's timeless models, and we were actually talking about the 250 GTO, which well he grew up looking at it, and it was just
Mm.
something big inspiration of his to make something that's timeless. The lines, the flowing lines. So
Yeah, exactly.
it's and those cars they're amazing.
Yeah, just beautiful. And you look at them today, and it's hard to believe how they could, build something like that, I
Yeah.
don't know, 70, 80 years ago,
When it
right?
was all by hand with
Exactly. They
with
were
the
all, hammer, aluminum, and a couple of guys, and, just bending materials and welding them, and it was just an amazing process. And it's hard to believe that there was a time where you could get one of these cars for, I don't know, less than $100,000. Like
yeah
30 years ago, 40 years ago, people were giving away 250 GTOs. They didn't
yeah
they didn't want them. They didn't know what to do with them. And
and that
now, you have one of the most
most
expensive
expensive
cars in history
Ferrari.
for 70. I think that the last one that was sold was at the Mecum auction, the white one, for 35, almost $40 million.
It's
Um,
that's not even the highest.
And that's not even the highest. And that one didn't even have complete matching numbers. Like the chassis number
Yeah,
was correct, and it had certain pieces that belonged to the car, but the engine was not the original engine that car came with. And that's another thing that like collectors look for when they're buying, especially old cars. You look for the car to have complete matching numbers, so that the
the original.
transmission, the engine, and the chassis, all have
Yeah,
the same
on
number, so
matching.
that you know that, there's nothing really wrong there. This
Yeah,
car didn't have it, and it still went for $40 million.
it's
So it's
something
just
crazy.
it's
And well, it's also kind of well, since they were made by hand, it's kind of why they're also so special. Each one of them is different, unique.
yes, exactly. They're not completely exactly the same because
Yeah,
it's just impossible.
yeah. It's what makes them special. Yeah. And well, now you've also raced, right? A bit of racing.
A little bit.
You actually won a race recently, right?
Well, it's been some years since the last time I raced. I would say last time was before my first kid was born. After that,
Mhm.
my wife told me, you need to get your priorities straight and think about your family. Even, I wasn't competing professionally, but still,
Yeah,
going
it's a dangerous sport.
you're going pretty fast, and you're taking risks that, you don't necessarily need to be taking
Mhm.
if you're not really racing. But yeah, I have had some experience. I've done some racing in my past, mostly amateur, but
Mhm.
it's a different world.
Still racing, and it's still a like, well, you've got experience in it. So what do you think is the biggest difference between a car that's designed for racing and one that's designed for track? Not that's like road legal, but designed for track.
Yeah, yeah. I think that at the end of the day, it all comes down to safety regulations. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Uh, yeah. Maybe there's always some, some tweaks and things that you can do to the cars in order to put, that breach that gap between the actual track or race car.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, a track car can be a road car that you converted yourself to a track car to become a track car. But a race car, I think it really has to become like from the factory, specifically designed with all the parts, the necessary parts for it to be considered like an actual race car.
Uh-huh.
Because at the end, the transmission has to be balanced in a certain way. The brake system is completely not completely different, but the parts are specifically made for racing.
Yeah.
The chassis in itself, it's built out so that if you have a big crash, then at the end of the day everything on the outside of the chassis might get destroyed, but you that are inside the shell
Yeah.
gets protected somehow. So I think that there are big difference all around in the design of the car and the parts of the car that make it go from track to race.
Yeah. And even the same car,
And
eh,
even the same car, yeah, definitely. I mean,
between production and making a race car.
what I used to race was 911 Porsches.
Yeah.
Okay. And even they had different within the same model, they had different type of racing cars.
Uh-huh.
So you had the Carrera Cup cars, which were basically cars that you could race that were raced for amateurs. Okay, basically, and they were also the same cars that were made for professional drivers that were turning into professionals, and then were in a couple of years developing as race car drivers. Those were the cars that you could race the IMSA series here in the US, for example. And you had the challenge, I think it's the Carrera Cup championship in Europe, and also here in the US, that goes through in the IMSA
Yeah.
category. Okay, and then you had of that same model car, the 911, you had the GT series, which were the cars that were built to race endurance. Okay,
Uh-huh.
and then you had a different model that was like even more upgraded, that was the car that specifically raced the WEC championship, the
Yeah.
GT3 cars. So they're all different and made out for different types of racing. The say simple, they're not simple, but for the sake of argument, or the simpler Carrera Cup cars were built out for short races. Okay. So they had, again, simpler brake systems and different
Yeah.
transmissions. And then, as you were building up for different types of racing, for endurance racing, for example, the car not completely changed, but you had to change,
Yeah.
the variables that make a car go longer, for a
Yeah.
longer period of time, pushing it to the limit.
Yeah. And it's kind of exactly the aesthetics may be the same. It might look the exact same from the outside, but
Mhm.
it's really changing from the inside. All the systems, all the way it's built, the processes, well,
Yeah.
everything, the
Yeah,
materials.
yeah, yeah. Of course. And at the end, they end they also end up tweaking a little bit the design, the exterior design, and the aesthetics of it, just because when the car goes faster and when you have to make it stop at certain speeds, you also have to change the aerodynamics of it, right?
Yeah.
So it automatically makes it the engineers have to switch and tweak some things in the design as well.
Exactly.
So you would see how a cup car, which is already a super aggressive car, but the evolution of it towards the WEC car, for example, or the GT3 car,
Hmm.
you can see it. You can differentiate a GT3 car from a cup car
Yeah.
easily, just because of those different switches in design.
Yeah. Because, well, yeah, the top car, it's it's meant to be aerodynamic, but they're at shorter races at well different race conditions. Aerodynamics is obviously a huge part, but it's not mainly focused on it, aerodynamics.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Correct.
And well, kind of lastly, a bit to start ending the interview.
Hmm.
From your experience collecting Ferraris, how has their engineering philosophy changed over time? Or do you think it's maintained?
So I think that I think we would have to remember how the whole brand came to exist, and came to how it became what it is. So
Mm,
Enzo started selling cars because it was a means to an end, right?
yeah,
He needed money for racing,
for racing.
right? So from that point on, he started selling the cars that he was also racing. And then they grew as a brand, obviously they needed more money, but to keep developing the cars and the technology. But it's always been something that everything that they developed in the racing world, they would then apply it in the commercial cars that they
Yeah,
that they
yeah.
built, right? So everything that they would test, and that they could corroborate that would work, and that they could put it safely in the production cars, they would.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see that happening over time. They were one. I don't want to. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm 95% sure that they were the ones who invented the paddle shifting in Formula One.
I don't know, but
We would have to check, but
I'll
they
fact
weren't
check
the
it.
ones who invented it. I think they were right there. But then they started putting those in the production cars as well. And you have cars, I think, from the 355s. Most of them already have the F1 shifting pads. So everything that they tried in the racing world, they would translate and they would transmit it to the production cars. You can see that happening over time. Also trying to keep and trying to maintain their originality within certain models, and you can see that happening um through their 12 cylinder series, which is
Yeah,
their main winning car with the 250
your
GTO, where
biggest
where
cars.
kind of
Yeah,
everything started. Not started, but when they became most famous for, I would say.
yeah. And well, finally, if you had to build your perfect car from the engineering aspects you've experienced, from like whether it was the engine, the chassis, the suspension, the weight, the aerodynamics, you could pull them out from every car you've driven and put them into one car. Which ones would you put? So, or some of your favorites?
That's a very big and open question. Look, it's I would say that I would start by a naturally aspirated V12, Ferrari V12. Um, the transmission, a manual transmission, obviously. Um, I would put that into maybe an F40 car. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, the F40 is amazing, but it's the engine is complicated, and you have the turbos that when they engage, they can be deadly.
Yeah,
Okay. So I would try to put it like a V12 on an F40, and I don't know, start from there. Let's say that.
and the weight of your John Cooper works.
And wow, yeah, and the weight of the joke weight, that would be something. That would be something. Yeah.
Well, uh, thank you so much, Lino,
Yeah, of course, man.
for talking with me. I think all the insight you brought, I think, was amazing. And I hope I can maybe go visit someday. We could record an episode there someday.
Of course. Anytime. Just let me know.
Yeah,
Okay.
I hope to see you again.
Definitely, man. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode. And before I leave, don't forget to subscribe to see all my future interviews and get to know more about the motorsports world. That's all for today. I'm Jordi Facha Alvarez, and I hope you have a great week.